Disclaimer. The Minority Report podcast by Mike B. Minor. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine only and do not reflect those of any affiliated individuals, organizations, or employers. This content is for entertainment and informational purposes only, so listen with an open mind. And if you don't agree, that's cool too.
America feels less like a democracy and more like a Coliseum. The crowd's always hungry, we cheer when our champions win, and we boo when they fall. And we don't care about what scars they bring back into the locker room. Athletes, artists, politicians, they're the new gladiators. And we don't just watch their victories, we feed on their failures. One scandal, one misstep, and we want to see blood. It's not about principle anymore. It's about spectacle. And the bigger the crowd, the bigger the appetite. Now here's a twist. Gladiators didn't choose their fight. They were thrown in. But today's gladiators, they volunteer. They walk in for the fame, for the bag, and for the shot at freedom. Right? And still, the system chews them up the same way Rome did. Pit them against each other and crown the winners, but discard the rest. The crowd claps either way. And the danger? When the Coliseum becomes a model for government, the strongest voice isn't the wisest voice, it's the loudest. Noise gets mistaken for truth, and money gets mistaken for morals. And the crowd learns to confuse entertainment with leadership. That's the demon we're chasing tonight. My name is Mike B. Minor, and welcome to episode 7 of the Minority Report. Okay, so first of all, man, I just want to thank everybody, all my followers, everybody who's been commenting, the people who hate me, the people who've been sharing me, the people reposting, the bookmarks, all that, whether you're on YouTube or on TikTok. I appreciate you guys, or maybe somebody's reposting my videos or on Instagram or something. I don't know. To all my frequent followers, my frequent subscribers, YouTube, TikTok, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you've been commenting, sharing, bookmarking, reposting, whatever, man, thank you all for that. I truly appreciate the love. I appreciate the engagement and everything. And I promise you guys it's going to a good place as far as this. I do see my message starting to become a little bit more popular, and it's not moving in this wildfire like motion, right? But this is how you build a coalition. It's about consistency, number one, and number two, just being sure that you're committed to the process. And that's what I've been, all right? I've been consistent and committed to the process heavily. So if you haven't already done so, please do me the honor and the favor of liking everything. Just go straight down or straight across, like, share, subscribe, comment, do all that, especially if you see something that you like or you don't like. Please let me know. I love all points of view and everything. So I got a lot of backlash on my last episode, and that backlash came, for different subjects, one of them being about the Dixie Cracks and, other little subjects here and there. This one right here is going to hurt more, okay? I'm not here to entertain one side or the other. I'm not blue team, and I'm not red team. I'm here to remind you both teams are playing us like we're the crowd. Remember, this is the Minority Report, right? Where the center ain't sexy, but it just might save us. And Republicans bring the outrage, and the Democrats bring the excuses, and both keep selling tickets to the show. So this episode, we're starting with California's billions. All that homelessness money burnt through with nothing to show. Then we'll ask, why do we need broke people? Why does this system run smoother when families are drowning? We'll talk about movements getting conflated, media turning bias into a business model, and Trump, the king of failing upward, who built this whole brand on forgiveness over permission. We'll deal with why America keeps letting money cover over morality. Okay, so buckle in. Tonight's not about booing or cheering. It's about asking the question the Coliseum never asks. What's the cost of the show? So let's start where the receipts are the loudest. Okay, everybody loves to point at MAGA rot, right? And believe me, we'll get there. But I'm not just going to sit here and always rag on MAGA. If I'm going to play the center, which is what I've been playing, all right, I've got to start with home base, all right? And I'm going to start right here at home because California, the crown jewel of Democrats, is looking less like a model and more like a warning label. billions poured into homelessness, record high taxes, and somehow still broke. If this is the future, then the future looks like debt and dysfunction. Let's get into it, man. You know, a lot of people want to put everything on MAGA Republicans, right? And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of rot there. But if we're going to be real, if we're going to live in the center, we can't just talk about one side's failures. Democrats have had their share too. Think about it. The Affordable Care Act rolled out that stumbled, and there's a lot of people complaining about it. It, increased prices for people as far as premiums and stuff like that. That did happen. Okay, border policy that's never been solved. Cities like Chicago and New York struggling with crime and migrant influx. Student debt promises that turn into political ping pong. And climate policies that sound great but can't survive their own red tape. If we're going to hold Republicans accountable to Trumpism, we've got to level the playing field and look hard at Democratic failings too. And no place makes that point clearer than California, one of the jewels of the Democratic Party. High taxes, high regulation, all the resources you can imagine, and still a massive deficit and one of the worst homelessness crises in the country. If this is the model for what democratic socialism is supposed to look like, then what it looks like is in this practice is debt and dysfunction. I said a little bit about this before, right? California is a high tax state, but here's the catch. It leans on a volatile tax base. The wealthy, the capital gains, the stock market booms. When the market drops, revenue collapses. Meanwhile, spending keeps going. $24 billion on homelessness, billions more on social programs, healthcare, and climate projects. The state once bragged about a $98 billion surplus, but those numbers were built on inflated assumptions. Now we're looking at deficits closer to 12 to 20 billion. That's not temporary, that's structural. And the tools Sacramento uses to paper over the hole, pulling from reserves, gimmick accounting, those are short-term fixes, not solutions. And if Republicans did it, we'd be calling them out for it. Nothing shows the failure clearer than homelessness. California poured $24 billion in 5 years into programs like Project Room Key, Home Key, and the Homeless Housing Assistance Program. The idea was to convert hotels into permanent housing, expand services, and get people off the streets. On paper, it sounds bold. In practice, the state auditor says there's no consistent tracking, no clear data on what actually worked. Meanwhile, the homelessness still ticked up around 187,000 people unhoused as of 2024, nearly 30% of the U.S. total. Now, let me also point out real quickly, even though homelessness in California has ticked up a bit, it actually did tick down. I think it was like 0.87% in Los Angeles. That's just to put that out there to be fair. But it had, in California as a whole, it has ticked up. Then add in the high cost of living. $500,000 to build a single unit. Rents that eat up 50% of income. And suddenly, all those billions don't stretch as far as they should. Add a state deficit on top of that, and you're burning cash without solving the problem. And here's where it gets ironic. Democrats built regulations like CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. All right. And it's meant to protect the environment. And it's a noble idea, right? But now those same rules are being used to block the very shelters and housing the state is trying to build. Even funnier, Republicans who mock climate laws and deny climate change turn right around and file CEQA lawsuits to stop a homeless shelter in their backyard. They don't want to say out loud, we just don't want unhoused people here. Instead, they hide behind an environmental law they don't even believe in. Quick sidebar. That's the same kind of coded hypocrisy we see when MAGA folks talk about race. They don't want to say they're racist, so they frame it another way. They'll say, oh, we love black people. We're for equality. But when black families move into the neighborhood, when the culture shifts, when they start seeing things that they label as ghetto, suddenly the complaints start. It's NIMBY, aka not in my backyard, all over again. We're not racist. We just don't like what they do. Translation. We're fine with you existing. Just keep it over there. Not in my backyard. We've seen this before. School integration. We're not against black kids. We just don't like busing. House discrimination. We're not racist. We just want to preserve our property values. Policing. We're not racist. We just don't like the crime that comes with them. Even today with voter laws. We're not racist. We just want election integrity. Same playbook every time. Soften the language, dress it up, but the result is the same. Keep those people at arm's length. And that's exactly what's happening with homelessness too. People say, we care, we support solutions, but the moment a shelter is planned near their kid's school, suddenly they're environmentalists. Suddenly it's about traffic, it's about noise or zoning. It's about the same NIMBY instinct, just dressed in different clothes. And it's not just California. This is the same broken playbook in D.C. Let's not forget, after George Floyd, Tim Scott put forward a police reform bill. It wasn't perfect, but it lined up with a lot of Democratic priorities. Instead of negotiating, instead of saying, let's fix this, let's add that, and then we'll support it, Democrats just killed it outright. And Republicans do the same thing. Look at Senator Langford's immigration bill. And I just had a whole debate about this earlier today, so let's be very clear. I'm not talking about the fluff bill, the one that Langford ended up, saying no on. I'm talking about the original one that him, Kirby, and Sinema brought forward, and it got killed because Trump said, hey, it would be bad to run on, it would be bad for us, blah, blah, blah. Trump and MAGA killed it before it had a chance because they didn't want Biden to even get that win, even though it included policies they supported. So here's the bigger truth. Both sides would rather sabotage each other than fix the problem. Democrats build systems they can't manage. Republicans sabotage fixes they secretly need, and both chase headlines instead of solutions. What we need isn't deregulation out of annoyance or regulation for regulation's sake. We need responsible deregulation, accountable policies, and leaders willing to negotiate in good faith. Because right now, California's deficit and America's dysfunction, along with its deficit in debt, are telling the same story. Political theater wins and people lose. See, that's a pattern. Democrats burn billions, Republicans block solutions, and both of them call it governing. But let's be real. Deficits don't fall on politicians. They fall on families. Because regular folks are clocking 8 to 12 hours and they still can't afford a stable roof. And that's the part they never say out loud. The system doesn't just tolerate broke people, it needs them. So let's talk about it in Family Matters. Broke people aren't a bug of the system. They're the feature. If you can grind 8 to 12 hours and still can't buy stability for your kids, that's not a mistake, that's design. Design that strips dignity for profit. Parents on doubles, kids self-raising, stress-wrecking marriages, and the system runs on that desperation. Landlords, corporations, Wall Street, all cash in on the difference. You'll hear, if everyone made a living wage, inflation eats it. And that's true when every actor is self-maximizing with no break. A few episodes ago, I proposed a fix as a stabilizer, right? It was a government-backed, privately run store for essentials, all right? And I'm not really trying to talk too much about it. I feel like you should go back to the other episode and watch it if you really care about it. One of the things I said was, hey, what if we had a government-backed, privately run store for essentials, right? That forces the Krogers and the Targets and the Walmarts to chill or lose share. It's not socialism. It's capitalism with guardrails. Not saying this is the only way to do it, but I'm just giving an idea of something that could potentially help all around. The only thing it hurts are these corporations' profits. And not in a negative way, it just means we just stunt their growth a bit. They don't grow as much as they could have. Real quickly, just think about it. The pandemic hit, and then they rose the prices of groceries and all these other things because they said, hey, it's harder to get it because it costs more, blah, blah, blah. When the pandemic was over, did they bring those prices back? When inflation came down, did they bring those prices back? No, they always use that as a reason to explain why they are raising your prices, okay? Since 2020, consumer prices rose roughly about 23%, while making and moving goods often climbed about 25 to 30%. Wages, they're up about 17 to 18%. Basically flat after you include inflation. So that's a 7 to 10 point squeeze of why families feel underwater. Look at places proving you don't need to break people to run a state, right? Here's some examples I looked up. Norway, they ran a huge budget surplus, about 16.5% of the GDP in 2023 and about 13% in 2024, while maintaining strong social supports. That's fiscal discipline and family stability. Greece, after a brutal decade, and let's not forget, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Greece went bankrupt at one point, right? After a brutal decade, posted a 2024 surplus of about 1.3% of their GDP, only one of only 6 EU surpluses, by cracking down on tax evasion and growing the economy. Proof turnarounds happen without crushing households. Scandinavia generally, right? Fewer annual work hours. Think about 1,350 to 1,400 in Denmark, Norway, and Germany range. And better work-life balance, yet competitive economies. Health is a bill that never stops. The U.S. spent about $13.4K per person in 2023, while comparable nations average about 7.4. That's about half, and many still deliver longer life expectancy than we do. Cheaper care, healthier citizens, less family stress, and we know relationships matter, not just for love, but for longevity. Studies show that people in stable marriages report higher happiness and better health versus those stuck in cycles of breakup, cohabiting, instability, or divorce. Because stress, uncertainty, and instability, they kill more quietly than disease over time. And safety for families matter too. Many OECD countries post far lower homicide rates than the U.S. Of course, they don't have guns, most of them, or whatever, but they post far lower homicide rates than the U.S., reflecting different policing, prevention, and accountability cultures, aka daily life is just simply safer. Now, fair point, those countries aren't the U.S. They don't carry our defense load. We're the largest military spender on earth, and they don't donate abroad at U.S. totals. America put up about $66 billion in official development assistance in 2023. The biggest donor by dollars, all right? But even with that role, our budget isn't balanced. We're just shifting overspend around. The issue isn't generosity or defense. It's what we let domestic systems overcharge families and undeliver stability. Countries that trend toward stronger family bonds often also trend toward societies that live longer, safer, and more content lives. Many OECD nations average life expectancies above 80 years. The U.S., we're stuck in the 75 to 80 band. So I'm not selling socialism. I'm selling sobriety. Price stabilizers for essentials, right? Tax gold guardrails. Break only if you reinvest in workers, communities, and domestic production. And competition with the conscious. Profit, yes. Predation, no. If suppliers try to collude or blacklist stabilizer stores, that's antitrust territory, by the way. Just in case you were wondering, what if they were to try to retaliate? All right, that's illegal, okay? The presence of a stabilizer bends the market toward families, not away from them. We don't need broke people. Corporations do. Families thrive when a full day's work buys a poor but stable life and a path up. Capitalism without guardrails is a fast car with no brakes. It doesn't feel free when it's your family, it plows through. Broke people aren't a mistake in the system. They are the system. And that's the part we can change. If you want a society where people stick together, life is longer, and health is better, you got to build environments where families aren't crushed by work, by debt, and by instability. Because broken families are symptoms of broken systems and not bad luck. And that's how you know the game is rigged. Families grind themselves to the bone just to stay afloat, while the system profits off their struggle. But exploitation doesn't stop at the wallet. It shows up in the way our movements get packaged too. Because when you're fighting for survival, everybody wants you to carry their banner. And here's the truth. Not every fight is the same. So let's get into that when we talk about the village. This episode is riddled with a bunch of takes that are going to get me potentially canceled. But I'm just going to say it. People keep trying to act like the black movement and the LGBTQ movement are the same fight. Newsflash, they're not. They're both valid, both deserving of protection, both civil rights. But they are two fights, not one. Here's the difference. Black folks were persecuted for what we are, skin, features, something you can't hide. LGBTQ folks were persecuted for what society framed as what they do. Sex, relationship, expression, even though it's rooted in who they are. Both are unjust, but both can't be confused. Confusing them weakens both fights. Now, people will say, but if we all unite, won't that make us stronger? That sounds good in theory, but let's be real. 70% of Americans support same-sex marriage today, okay? 70%. And that's not just Democrats. That is all Americans. 70% of them support same-sex marriage, okay? Over 90% believe black and white folks should have equal rights. But ask about a trans athlete in women's sports, only 30% agree. That's the split. You gain consensus on protection and safety. You lose consensus when you conflate everything into one package. And that's the mistake. Too many people try to make their issue into everybody's issue. And that's not fair to the black community, not fair to Democrats, not fair to the country. Because instead of saying, look, even people outside our fight support this, it gets boxed in as, oh, that's just their fight. I can support you without being absorbed into your movement. That's not division. That's respect. Allyship does not mean assimilation. Okay, so we need to start thinking of these things like music. You can play your song, but you can't demand that everybody sings along with you. All right, and nobody should smash your radio. That's what we mean by protection. But if you crank up your radio to 100 and get mad that people ain't vibing with it, that's consensus. You'll never win. So here's the truth. Live how you want, be bold, be courageous, but don't confuse being bold with forcing everybody else to bend. You win more when you let each fight speak for itself instead of forcing us all to wear the same jersey. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that, in general. And I'm not trying to divide the black community from the gays. I know there was you can go back. I had a whole episode where this one person, I'm not going to say her name, but this one person that I was on a live with, she essentially was saying that the black people need to leave the gay community behind and everything. I'm not saying anything about leaving them behind. I'm saying that their issue is not black issues. If there's a black person that is in there and they have the same issue, now you have two. Okay? I'm not saying that we don't support you. I'm not saying that you don't deserve protections. I'm just saying stop trying to make your workload less. Democrats, I'm telling you right now, and I'm saying this respectfully, you guys need to drop a lot of your LGBTQ policies and stances. Not because you don't support them, not saying you can't support them. I'm saying that the Democratic Party for a very long time now has been disenfranchising a lot of their voters, not because they don't like the LGBTQ community, but because they're saying, why are we focused on that when we need this? Let's focus on high rent. Let's not focus on getting gender neutral bathrooms. Though that is a policy that you can support for the general voter. They say, hey, they're pushing for gender neutral bathrooms when inflation is sky high. Does that make sense? And they say, oh, well, because we could do multiple things. You're right. You're absolutely right. It doesn't change the fact that you disenfranchise some people because it's not that they don't care about those things. It's that they care less about those things than others. And they have a right to do that. Let's get into minor issues. All right. If your news feed was a restaurant, everything on the menu would be deep fried outrage. Doesn't matter if you order left or right, you're getting served whatever keeps you coming back for seconds. Look at TikTok, Instagram, cable. The algorithm doesn't care about facts. It doesn't care about balance. It just cares about, will you keep watching or will you stop scrolling? So yes, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they're not just in the news business, they're in the attention business. And in America, where free speech is protected, you can say damn near anything as long as it entertains. Now, here's where the fun begins, right? Consistency. Everybody screams bias, but every exception magically gets a pass when it's their side doing it. That's the rule of American media. Every hypocrisy gets its own hall pass. Fox is a prime example, right? After January 6th, you had anchors acting like it was a national tragedy. But give it a little bit of time, let the audience cool off, and suddenly you hear, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it was just a protest gone sideways. Or what was it? Maybe it was just a bunch of passionate Americans. That's what you heard. We saw it. Here, let me post a video, right? This and this. Tell me how they look any different. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it was just a protest gone sideways. Really? Same footage, different takes. That ain't news. That's editing for taste. And don't think that the left gets away clean either, right? Remember the DNC emails? Remember party insiders putting their thumb on the scale to push Hillary over Bernie? That was bias baked in, and yet coverage spotty at best. Imagine if Republicans had rigged a primary. Imagine if they had rigged a primary against Trump. But see, when Democrats do it, quiet, shuffle, move along, next story. And they wonder why Hillary lost. This is where it gets funny. Conservatives love to say liberal tears. They even sell mugs. But give it 5 minutes, right? Somebody on the right gets fact checked and suddenly you've got conservative fragility. Same product, different label. Everybody wants to play victim because victimhood sells. And that's the real point. Spectacle sells. Truth suffers. Truth is slow. Truth is boring. Truth requires nuance. And nuance doesn't trend. You know what does trend? Meltdowns. Outrage. Somebody crying on camera. Both sides monetize your emotions and not your information. If Democrats really wanted to break the cycle, they do something radical. Just stop talking about Trump. Don't make him the headline. When he says something, well, say, next question. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to feed the show. If you don't fight back on every single word, the circus gets boring and the ringmaster loses steam. I don't know why it's so hard for Democrats to get that. You lost because you brought when they say ding dong, the witch is dead, that's how we felt. The way Trump lost, okay? Trump lost after talking all that mess about Joe Biden. Then he lost the election and they still was, hey, look at this, boom, 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 boom. Then January 6th happened and it kept boom, 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 boom. How about y'all just stop? He was, respectfully, a dead man walking. He wasn't coming back. Let him get, January 6th happened, say what you got to say. I'm not saying don't do that, but y'all made a spectacle out of it. Do I believe he should have been impeached? I would have been like, man, he's on his way out. Don't come back. Forget impeaching him. Don't come back. And stop talking about him. But y'all gave him life. Y'all invigorated his voters. Here's the uncomfortable part. It ain't just media. It's us. Algorithms serve what we click. If you click outrage, they'll serve you more outrage. If you click nuance, you'll probably fall asleep before it buffers. So ask yourself, are you hungry for the truth or are you just hungry for more fries? Minor issue? Nah, that's a major problem. But the fix starts with starving the spectacle. Don't give them your outrage. Save that energy for the ballot box where it actually counts. See, the media keeps us glued to outrage, but rarely to outcomes because nuance doesn't trend, but meltdowns do. And while we're busy rage clicking, politicians are over here running the same scam with our wallets. They don't balance budgets. They balance storylines. They'll pass a 1,000-page bill nobody reads and sell us a 24-page add-on like it's gospel. It's theater, except the ticket price isn't your attention this time. It's your paycheck. So let's talk dollars and dysfunction, guys. Let's talk all about the Benjamins. Now, I had to rush this subject because as I was doing this, it happened and I saw it coming. Usually I take my time, but you know what? I'll just say something about it, okay? Is this government shutdown actual damage or just theater? It's both. Congress already gave us a full year continuing resolution back in March. They said that they will have a new one by now, okay? Both sides agreed and said that. Remember when the Democrats felt like Chuck Schumer had sold them out by going and agreeing to that deal and everything? You guys don't remember that? That whole fiasco. Come on, Democrats. So y'all froze 2025 spending at 2024 levels. So basically, we're still running off of Joe Biden's budget. Okay. Republicans got what they wanted baked in early. Don't forget, too, guys, the big, beautiful bill. But yeah, workers have been furloughed, paychecks are delayed, services are shut off. But the politics of this shutdown, that's pure theater. Republicans are waving around a so-called clean funding bill, a 24-page add-on, while ignoring a 1,000-page big, beautiful bill they already passed. Who feels the pain? Not Congress, not the billionaires, it's everyday citizens. Federal employees waiting on checks, contractors whose money gets held, Americans paying higher costs thanks to tariffs and rescissions. They'll say the government is losing money, but nah, the pain lands squarely on us. Can shutdowns ever be useful? Yeah. They're always tactical. Under Biden, Republicans negotiated. They did threaten to shut it down, but they always negotiated. Under Trump, it's bad faith all the way. They rescind, they claw back, and when Democrats finally stand firm, suddenly we hear, you don't want to govern. Nah, Democrats are just out of cards, and this is their last stand. And to be honest, I would be completely against the Democrat stance if you guys hadn't done what you guys have been doing all year long with this budget. Trump tried to close departments in the government that are funded by Congress. He took it all the way to court. Court said, you can't do it. You can't do it. And so he said, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll just reduce the staff. I can't control the levels of the staff. And if there's just money sitting here, I'm just going to tell Congress to take it back. And Congress said, okay. Not all of Congress, but Republicans. And these continuing resolutions, these CRs, are supposed to be a bridge, but Congress has made them the whole damn highway. They had time this year for tax cuts, party line nominees, and endless investigations, but not a real budget. That's irresponsible. Let me say this again. I said this a second ago. They are running off of Joe Biden's last budget. So here's how I keep it simple. If you want to hold politicians accountable, stop getting lost in the weeds and ask them, what did you actually spend money on? What bills did you pass? What hearings did you run? And if they had time for all that, why couldn't they fund the government? Meanwhile, Medicare and Social Security still flow because they're mandatory, which, if you ask me, is kind of a quiet win for Democrats because it reminds folks what government can do, right? Even when everything else is broken. Shutdowns, deficits, tax cuts, CRs, all of it proves the same thing. America doesn't budget. It binge spends and then argues over the receipt. And the wildest part, that dysfunction doesn't stop at home. It bleeds into how we look abroad. Because while Congress is playing chicken with people's paychecks, the world is watching. And when the president steps on the stage, whether it's a DMZ photo op or a broken promise about Ukraine, the bill comes due in a different currency. Trust. Let's get into global frequency. All right. Let's get canceled. In 2019, Trump strutted across the DMZ into North Korea. A made-for-TV moment. Yeah, remember that? Oh my goodness. First American president since, I can't remember what's his name, that finally has walked into, North Korea. He tried to make peace. Give him credit for that, right? But in his, attempt to make peace, Kim Jong-un got legitimacy, propaganda, and a global spotlight. America got nothing. No denuclearization. He didn't stop shooting them nukes or testing nukes and shooting the missiles. No treaty. No trade deal. Pure optics. Zero outcomes. Now, if you think I'm about to go further into that, I'm not. I want to talk about what happened right before that. The New York Times, Guardian, and Al Jazeera broke the story this year, okay? In early 2019, SEAL Team 6 was sent on a covert mission to plant a listening device inside North Korea. They deployed from a nuclear submarine using wet subs to approach the shore, okay? They ran into a small fishing boat. Unarmed civilians diving for shellfish. They believed it was a threat, so reports say they killed about 2 to 3 civilians and then tried to hide the evidence. There was reports that said they pulled the bodies into the water and punctured their lungs so they'll sink. What ended up happening was they aborted the mission. The device was never planted. Okay? Now, a plan like this, best believe, required Trump's direct approval. But when asked, he said, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what y'all talking about. Okay? Now, either you believe him, and that indicates that as much as he said that Joe Biden didn't know what the hell was going on with his administration, now you have to admit that Trump didn't know about what was going on with his administration, or he knew about it and he just flat out lied. With Trump, you never know. So look, I get it. Missions go wrong, and that's just how special ops are. Okay? My problem with that isn't the failure. My problem is the secrecy and no accountability. Okay? A president greenlit a mission that killed civilians, produced nothing, and it never saw the light of day until 6 years later. Okay, I get it. There's a bunch of state secrets. I get that. But now that we know about it, Trump, can you please explain yourself? No, because you don't know. Maybe that was signed by your auto pen that you never use. This is the pattern, right? Big promises, both theatrics, but no results. Ukraine, day one peace. Didn't happen. Tariffs and trade wars. American farmers lost billions. They're talking about a $10 or $14 billion bailout plan. This is going to be the second time that Trump had to bail out farmers because of his policies. Consumers have to pay more. Okay? Free speech hypocrisy. Silences critics, but champions his own crowd. But he's bold. He breaks rules to get things done, guys. Leadership isn't about breaking rules. It's about fixing what's broken. Trump leaves broken pieces behind him. And here's the bigger danger. A president isn't just a policymaker. He's a symbol of his people. Ask yourself, what do you think when you hear Russians, Iranians, Syrians, North Koreans? We all make snap judgments based on their leaders. Guess what? That's exactly how the world sees us. And I can tell you this from experience, from knowing people, from traveling overseas. I travel all the time overseas. I just came back from overseas about a month ago. Okay? Let me explain this to you guys. The first time Trump won, overseas people thought it was a fluke. They were like, oh, man, America, just made a bad decision. Boom. They said, all right, whatever, 4 years, he'll be gone. Literally, that's what they were saying. I promise you. Okay? But when Trump won again and he came back, they said, oh, maybe this is who America is now. But it's not true. But nuance doesn't matter because abroad, he is America. When Trump travels abroad, he's shielded by the world's strongest military. If someone strikes at him, near him, close to him, or even makes a threat, the U.S. has an obligation to protect and or avenge him, God forbid. Right? In office or as an ex-president. Let me also put that out there. Me? I'm just a regular guy. I ain't got no Marines guarding me. I ain't got no F-35s flying over my head to make sure ain't nobody coming after me. I ain't got none of that. So if resentment against America boils over, who pays the price? The ordinary American abroad. And if something happens to me, God forbid, nobody's lowering the flag to half-mast. No state funeral, just another person carrying the weight of how America looks under Trump. Trump didn't just fail in North Korea. He failed in a bigger mission. The mission of representing who we are. He makes us look like him. And when the world reacts, it's not him who pays the price. It's us. That same pattern shows up at home. He calls every narrow win a mandate. He bulldozes president. He calls it strength. He breaks rules and calls it leadership. And when the fallout hits, the money machine covers over the morals that he never had. That's not governing with the mandate. That's governing with the money back guarantee, which is why it's time to step into the MOAB. Everybody loves to say they got a mandate. Win by an inch, and suddenly it's the people have spoken. A mandate isn't just a number. It's consent with context, and that context disappears the second politicians turn the word into a blank check. Now, to be fair, Trump won a popular vote. Not by a large landslide, but he did win the popular vote. He won the Electoral College. He had more states vote for him. He did flip a bunch of states. So I'm not saying that he didn't have, support. I'm not trying to take away from that. I'm just saying this wasn't Reagan. This ain't when Reagan won 48, 49 states. This ain't that. Nothing close to that. And by a popular vote, he won by how many? How many percentage points? Like 2 percentage points. Let me look that up. Trump won by 1.5 percentage points. As much as you guys want to talk about how well he did in an electoral college, let's not talk about all the gerrymandering because both sides did it. Okay? I'm not going to go into that. All I'm going to say is that he won by 1.5 percentage points when we're talking about the popular vote. Okay? When he ran against Joe Biden, he lost by 4.5. You ask Americans the headline question, is immigration out of control? Most will say yes. Ask the follow-ups. Do we deport a kid who's been here since age 2, pay taxes, honors the flag, helps their community? Most will say no. People want tough and fair. But Trump world takes the first poll, ignores the second, and calls it a mandate to bulldoze everything in sight. That's not policy, that's marketing. A win is a win, but a mandate is a win with consent and clarity, not just a vibe. Okay, this is the same trick on a debate stage. Take one stat, black families were more intact before civil rights, and then pretend that proves civil rights were bad. Skip the man in the house rule, skip mass incarceration, skip the war on drugs. That's not inquiry, that's sabotage dressed up as a question. Let me show you how this works culturally, right? The N-word started as a slur. Black folks reappropriated it inside the community. Do I love that? Honestly, and this is my take, once we took the sting out of it, we should have retired it. So that's our miss. That's my opinion, okay? But look at what happened. Outsiders point at that reappropriation and say, well, if they can say it, is it really that bad if we say it? And that's the move. Take an agreed upon boundary, strip away the history and the context, and use the exception to erase the rule. It's not learning, it's license. And once you accept that logic for a word, you'll accept it for laws. The same with DEI. They preach merit, but their version of merit includes legacy, network, and pedigree. DEI tries to drag merit back to being just about skill and experience for everybody, not just because of who you know. And suddenly, meritocracy is just a dirty word. That's not principle, it's power defending itself, okay? Now, scale up. Regulations exist because something once went wrong. Adults will ask, which parts are outdated? What can we streamline? That would be like a scalpel. But this crowd shows up with a chainsaw. Cut it all. We'll add it back later if we need it. No surgeon says that. No surgeon says, let's remove half the body and rebuild on Tuesday, okay? You cut what's necessary and you keep the rest intact and you document why, because precedent matters. That's how Trump handled the Constitution. Treat settled law like a suggestion. Hate speech, norms, birthright citizenship, emergency powers. He didn't just test boundaries, he erased lines, then called it a mandate. And once the top treats guardrails like speed bumps, everyone else floors it. Free speech is broad. Boundaries are culture. Rewriting norms by pretending history doesn't exist is not free, it's frictionless power. And when you erase lines, money does the rest. That's how you incubate monsters. Epstein, Weinstein, Donald Sterling, Robert Kraft, Dan Snyder. Decades of abuse and racism hidden in plain sight because the money was flowing. When you own the team, scandal is a footnote. When you play for the team, scandal is your obituary. That's not justice, guys. That's accounting. I'm not saying never question precedent. Question it to improve it, not to burn it down. I'm not saying only Republicans do this. I'm saying Trump industrialized it, turned bad faith questioning into a business model and emergency powers into a cheat code. Regulations aren't holy, but they're not random either. Okay? If you can't explain why one existed, you're not reforming, you're wrecking. He's not governing with the mandate. He's governing with the money back guarantee. Provoke, profit, repeat. Fail upward, cash out anyway. And that's the danger of America's Coliseum. We turn failures into headlines and we turn money into morals and then we call it leadership. But sometimes it's not even presidents or billionaires running that play. Sometimes it's the voices on the sidelines, the commentators, the culture warriors, who sell outrage the same way others sell oil or tech. They don't hold office, but they do hold influence. They don't pass laws, but they will pass poison. So let's finally get into this. You thought I was going to end on Trump? Nope. We're going to end on Charlie Kirk. Normally, who wants smoke is for the trolls in my comments or folks who hop on lives and debates talking reckless. But this week, it's for all the people mad at what I had to say about Charlie Kirk's death. Let me start with this. If you really followed Charlie Kirk, you should actually celebrate what I'm doing right now. Because one of the few things I agree with him on about free speech in theory. He always said we should have the tough conversations, say the things nobody wants to say, and debate it out instead of hiding. So that's what I'm doing. Not because of Charlie Kirk, but because I've always done this. Okay? So I'm just saying to all you Charlie Kirk people out there that's going to be triggered by what I got to say, don't hate me, debate me. And let me also be clear. Charlie Kirk's death was horrible, y'all. Nobody should go out like that, right? Nobody. My condolences go out to his family, especially those children, all right? I got kids of my own, so I can only imagine how they would react if they saw me go out the same way Charlie Kirk went out. So I truly mean that in the most sincere way, okay? They didn't deserve to inherit the footage and the propaganda that comes with the memes, and that's crazy, man. That's a heavy burden. So I really am. I can't say this enough. I really do feel bad for that man's children. Now, let's be real. We've had way more folks we cared a whole lot more about that died, and nobody ever looked our way to care. Let me tell you someone we cared about as far as the black community, or at least LA. Nipsey Hussle. He was more influential in the community than Charlie ever was, at least the black community. Fact check me. Triple X Tentacion. He had way more fans. And his death lit an entire generation. These are two people who were killed due to gun violence, okay? That's not getting into other people like Juice WRLD. Jesus Christ. You know? Or let's also talk about Aaliyah. She inspired millions of girls to want to be like her, y'all. None of them got the flag flown at half-mast. None of them. So I'm sorry to the kids and the surviving family. I really am, right? But now because of his followers and their rhetoric that he instilled in them, I got to bark back. See, as a child, I was taught, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And that's what a lot of black children are taught by their parents. And that's exactly why so many black folks were silent when Charlie Kirk died. Yeah, we were talking amongst each other, and you had a couple of people who were going on online and talking about it, but we weren't celebrating or nothing. We just said, oh, damn, that's crazy. Y'all don't understand. Silence was the compassion. That was our restraint. And we've done this before. Jesse Smollett, when he lied, we were quiet. We didn't say much. We talked amongst each other. We didn't say much. OJ got acquitted. White America screamed. We're like, shh. Cosby fell. R. Kelly got exposed. Kanye spiraled. Because silence is how we say we're not celebrating, but we're not co-signing either. You kept asking us. And when you ask, especially a black person, you're probably going to get the truth. The Bible says love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy, it does not boast. It is not arrogant or rude, all right? Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Tell me, when did Charlie Kirk ever preach that? When did he live by those values? If he was the Christian leader y'all claim, why didn't love ever lead? I was on a panel, and this one lady asked this person who was over arguing about Charlie Kirk and everything. She said, do you know what the Sermon on the Mount was? And they couldn't tell. And you say you're a Christian, you should know what the Sermon on the Mount was. You guys should know. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. You also should know Jesus was the person who said, if anyone is free of sin, cast the first stone. Okay? These are all very, very, very like mainstream Christian teachings. Okay? But for some reason, Charlie Kirk's followers don't ever know this. I'm not going to say all of them. Some of them do. But a lot of them don't know this. And they can't point to when Charlie Kirk was talking about it. Charlie Kirk was all over the place, right? He called Martin Luther King a hero, right? Sound good. Then he turned around and said he was awful. He said anybody of any skin color could be qualified to be a pilot, right? Then proceeded to say the only reason a black pilot will make it is because of DEI. And a lot of people are going to say, that's out of context. No, that is the context. He said, I don't want to feel, right? I don't want to feel like boom, boom, boom because of DEI. Anyways, I'm tired of telling Charlie Kirk followers why it's just so bad to use that as an example. Why couldn't you say, if you see somebody with a beard, why it had to be a black person? He called 3 of our most decorated black women dumb. He even said one of the most accomplished musicians in history, not just in our community, but in history, Beyonce, wasn't good. So yeah, when he tried to compliment black people, he found a way to take it back. And if you think he wasn't spreading hate, do me a favor. I got 4 questions for you. 4 questions for you guys. Name one positive thing he ever said about black folks. Name one positive thing he ever said about Hispanics. Name one positive thing he ever said about gays. Here's my favorite one. Name one positive thing he said about the Democrats. That's not just one group, okay? That encapsulates over 200 million people. We have, 330 or 360 million people in the U.S. So guess what? I have just described over half the country. If Kirk was really about love, why couldn't he say one good thing about half the nation? Hexeth went and had that meeting with military members, and he tried to say FAFO, and it was so cringe. It was cringe. Like, oh my God, you really butchered this. FAFO came from black folks. It's a black phrase. Charlie Kirk spent his entire career effing around with the people he disrespected. Now, folks are shocked he found out. Don't ask us to cry over the same fire he helped set. Here's a bigger issue, all right? Debate has become the new sport. People don't debate to solve problems anymore. They just debate to win. But the point of debate is to share different views on an issue or a topic and to get your point across and leave with some new understanding. If all you're doing is pushing your point, that's not a debate. That's a lecture. And now with social media, kids and plenty of immature adults love it because it's easy to find people who think just like them. But more often than not, that's actually more dangerous for the society, okay? Some things are considered bad for a reason. There's a reason why racism is thought to be bad. But you'll go on the internet and you'll find a whole bunch of racist folks and they will say, I'm not racist, I just don't like this. And then I don't like that either. And we all go against. And then they become this whole racist cult. Turning Point USA. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Oh, too early. Anti-vaxxers use the internet to spread lies until mistrust in medicine hit an all-time high. Kirk did the same with politics. He was turning lies and outrage into entertainment. And by lies, manipulated stats, satire, however you want to put it. He used it to create outrage. And he turned that outrage into entertainment. At the end of the day, choices have consequences. Charlie Kirk was MAGA's Tupac, okay? But his music wasn't poetry. It was outrage. His message wasn't uplift. It was grievance. Tupac gave us keep your head up. Kirk gave us keep your hate up. And that's why his legacy is rage on repeat. One thing's for certain. Two things for sure. He championed the First and Second Amendments, okay? But due to the way he horrifically passed, maybe now his followers agree more with Democrats than ever. And if that's the case, then in some twisted way, he did achieve his goal. He brought people together. I guess rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Y'all, this has been a hell of a month. Hell of a month. It's been very heavy. Personally, I've been going through a lot. Mentally, I've been going through a lot. Career-wise, everything. It's been a lot. Politically, it's a lot that's been going on. It's been a heavy, heavy, heavy month. And I honestly wasn't going to say much of anything about the Charlie Kirk thing. I know everybody says that, but I truly wasn't. I just thought it was just fodder. The reason why I'm addressing it is because so many people were talking about it. I like I said, the only thing I agree with him is his stance on the First Amendment. And even with that, it's not all the way. I think some things are dead for a reason. They shouldn't be brought back up. And I got to say, I've been very discouraged. People will tell you, in fact, you can look, a lot of these things I say now, this is my 7th episode of the Minority Report. I have 7 episodes worth of material. I talk about racism. I talk about my stance on the LGBTQ movement multiple times. I talk about my stance when it comes to my own race and how we deal with people. I talk about my relationship with the white community and with other cultures and stuff like that. I talk about my political views. I talk about how I feel about Trump, and good and bad. Okay? Democrats, good and bad. Republicans, good and bad. I have put my views out there, okay? So you can fact check me on my own stuff. I will tell you guys right now, I am one of the people who tries to advocate for blacks to stop treating white people in America like this is the 60s. Y'all sent Charlie Kirk out here and y'all immortalized this man and y'all try to demonize everybody who did not agree with this man. I was like, yo, you guys, please don't do this. I'm trying to advocate that things are getting better, and you guys are really hurting my argument. It really hurt my views on America's progress in the realms of race. As always, thank everybody for y'all support. I need more, but for everybody that supports me, thank you. If you haven't, or if you like any of the content I'm putting up right now, please do me a favor, smash the like button. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking, whether you agree or disagree. All discourse is welcome. Okay, please share this content, repost, save it, bookmark it, all these things. If you guys do all that for me, trust me, it helps me out. It helps the algorithm push me to other people, especially if you enjoy my message. Even if you don't like my views, there are a lot of people who hate my views but respect me as a person. And I will hope that I can garner that same type of favor from you guys who are looking at this and listening to this. We started tonight in a Coliseum, right? Where spectacle sells and substance gets slaughtered. That's not just sports or music, that's politics. We've built a nation where outrage is profitable, where broken promises get recycled as campaign slogans, where both parties care more about the show than the score. Republicans say, we're not racist, we just want election integrity. All right, translation, keep those people out. Democrats say, we're the moral high ground. Right. As long as you approve war budgets and cash checks from the same billionaires they claim to regulate. Different slogans, same hustle. A short-term lease with long-term consequences. And here's the part that cuts deep. If Republicans want to prove they're not racist, then stop defining racism by your terms and start listening to ours. If Democrats want to prove they're for the people, stop outsourcing your spine to every radical cause and just stand on your own pillars. Both sides are too busy trying to win the crowd. But democracy isn't supposed to be a cage match. It's supposed to be a negotiation. Messy, painful, sometimes ugly, but real. And it's supposed to produce results. That's why we need more parties, more coalitions, more real debate. Not this gladiator game where the only goal is to kill the other side and keep the crowd screaming. Because America doesn't need more gladiators. It needs fewer arenas. The show doesn't save us. The spectacle doesn't feed us. At some point, the crowd has to walk out of the Coliseum and demand something better. That's the center. It's not sexy, but maybe the only thing that's left that can save us. My name is Mike B. Minor, and a mic has just been dropped.